When choosing which cultural items to offer at our shop, the PATUKA might seem like an odd choice. It isn't commonly seen in Nepali formal wear and hasn't seen a resurgence amongst urban youth like the topi. However, for hundreds of years it has been deeply linked to the kukri, and an understanding of this simple cotton waist sash helps to deepen an understanding of the kukri itself. Many historical depictions of Gurkhas, Nepali warriors, and kings enforce the connection between the kukri and the sash. However, much like the kukri itself, it is an item that has both military and civilian roles, seeing wide utility in daily village life. Aside from kukri carry, they also allow for the carry of a hasia, sickle, or hammer, a tauda. The deep folds of the PATUKA allow for storage and organisation of all sorts of small objects, from money to snacks while working or travelling. It serves as padding when carrying pots, sacks, or children at the hip. In times of need, it can be unwrapped and used as a bandage, an extra layer to protect from the elements, or as a deep sling to carry large objects. Perhaps most notably, it acts as a brace to ease and soothe back pain, easing the ability to work for long periods while standing or bent over and working in the fields. Recently, this aspect has been subject to various scientific studies, with the benefits hardly verified. Waist sashes were widely worn across much of South and Central Asia historically, be it the Persian katseb or the Indian kamarband, which found its way back to the formal wear of Europe as the kamarband. The katseb was also known as the patka during the Mughal period in India, potentially an etymological link that unifies these different garments. Within modern Sikhism, the term patka refers to a more minimal alternative to a full turban that's often worn by young men and athletes. Here the connection is to the Punjabi word for cloth. There are multiple ways that a kukri can be carried in a PATUKA. Most commonly, the dap is inserted on the non-dominant side of the body, just in front of the hip, so that the edge is pointing forward and slightly towards your dominant side. The handle is lowered so that it is diagonal, potentially even closer to horizontal depending on the amount of curve in the blade. The offhand is used to stabilise the dap and maintain an effective draw angle, allowing for quite a natural cross draw. Other major variant is one where the dap is rotated further around to the front of the pelvis, and with the handle pointing up almost vertically, with the edge pointing towards the dominant side of the body. This style of carry has some interesting characteristics, including a stronger natural retention due to the help of gravity. However, it is when we get to drawing that things get more complex. In this position, the most natural draw into the dominant hand involves rotating the blade down 90 degrees towards the dominant hand and then drawing from there. This is notably less smooth than the previous carry method, and would become increasingly challenging with longer kukris. With your dominant hand, it's also possible to quickly draw even a long blade in an edge-in reverse grip if left without other options, though the blade presents limited utility until switching to a different grip. Similarly, your non-dominant hand can pull across into an edge-out reverse grip, something you'd likely want to transition out of pretty quickly in a fight. Of particular note is that a single-handed draw into an off-handed hammer grip is quite doable here, particularly with shorter blades. So why use this style of carry? It seems to us that it shows specific advantages in situations where a moderately sized kukri is used as a secondary blade, alongside a larger primary weapon such as the tulwar. It appears to be slightly more optimized for offhand draw than the previous carry method, but perhaps more important than that is that it clears up space for a larger blade to be drawn across the body without any interference. On older sheath styles such as our Salyani, there is a strap with buttons that we use to help locate the frog. These originated as a means to both help retain the sheath accessories held on the rear of the dap, as well as to aid in the retention of the dap within the sash. If the dap attempts to slide down through the sash, then the PATUKA buttons will snag on the upper folds and keep the blade secure. In some representations, these buttons are shown beneath the sash, which could potentially help stop the sheath from coming up during the draw. Depending on the activity at hand, the ability to rotate the dap around the waist can allow for greater freedom of movement. It is possible to carry different types and sizes of blades simultaneously through utilizing different folds of the sash. Aside from there being different ways to carry a kukri in a PATUKA, there are also different ways to tie a PATUKA.
A common way to tie them today is in a more ornamental style that can be seen in some ethnic formal wear. First, you fold the sash into thirds or quarters over itself to create a crisp band of your desired width, and then you roll it up for ease of tying. Hold the tail in front of your waist and pass the roll around your body, unraveling the roll as you go. As the roll crosses the tail for the first time, pass the tail up in front of the band and then tuck it in behind. Leave a little bit less than a foot of tail here, as it will be important later. Continue to pass the roll around your body, building up the waistband with every lap you make. As you reach the end of the roll, tuck the end in behind the waistband to hold it securely in place. Finally, take the tail you left at the front and tidy it up into a clean square section. Bring this up the front of the band and tuck it in behind for a tidy, squared-off look. Wider and flatter PATUKA styles like this have the benefit of a broader and more supportive band with a clean and unified look. In this method, a kukri is stuffed under the entire band against the body, which is less than ideal for comfort and movement. This style of tying is shown in this famous portrait of Prithvi Narayan Shah, but it is worth noting that this portrait was only created in the 1960s and may be a more modern development. While we have found some historical depictions of wider bands, we haven't found anything truly flat or that matches the specific style of termination at the front that is shown in this portrait. Another less formal style of tying a PATUKA is to use multiple, looser interwoven bands. This is a quicker and easier way to tie it, and it has more practical aspects too. This can be tied in much the same way, just by starting with a less crisp and neatly folded fabric, and applying a little bit less pressure when tying. In this style, the roll can be passed under or over additional times to create distinct sections and visual interest. The termination of the ends is less crucial in the style, and can be simply tucked behind a band or left dangling for visual flair as seen in this historical example. These looser bands can be flattened out or the folds cleaned up and deepened depending on the intended cargo. For example, here we can take a loop and create a valley so that objects can be held inside it. If we want to hold objects even more securely, we can fold over the top part of the loop to create a lid. If this lid faces outwards, then we can access it. But if it faces inwards, then it is very secure, and the PATUKA itself almost has to be untied in order to access it. Different loops are also readily distinguishable for organisational purposes. In this style of carry, the kukri can be stored against the body or between loops, which helps to spread force out against the body and create a little wiggle room for movement, though most commonly it also looks to be placed beneath the entire sash. We can readily find historical depictions of Gurkhas and civilians wearing this style, from the turn of the 19th century to the turn of the 20th century and through to today. In some of these older depictions particularly, we can see that there is a third style shown. This method involves taking the PATUKA and twisting it up into much thinner sections that strongly resemble rope. In fact, if we look at some photos from the late early 20th century, we can see what looks like actual cordage being used in the same or a similar roll. However, we can also see some depictions where it is clearly not rope and is in fact a sash of twisted fabric.
A short aside here. If you take the kind of PATUKA that is available in markets today in Nepal, it will not nearly be long enough to produce enough wraps as shown in these previous images. It seems that over time, PATUKA have become shorter and shorter, despite Nepalese people growing larger and larger. We spoke to shopkeepers who remember a time when PATUKA were measured in hat, or hands, though this is completely distinct from the unit of measurement for horses in the West. This measurement, which was roughly 18 inches, was commonly used in Nepal to communicate fabric lengths in earlier periods with lower numeracy and less Western influence. Formal wear PATUKA do not have functional concerns, and so length can be minimized to save cost and bulk, while ensuring that it is of sufficient length to wrap the body. Such PATUKA are often around 8 hat in length, which equates to 12 feet or 3.6 meters. Villagers can be more functionally minded though, and do tend to prefer longer PATUKA, which can provide greater back support, warmth, and storage capability. A shopkeeper we spoke to said that it is not uncommon for such PATUKA to get shorter with time, as strips are cut from the end for impromptu use as bandages and the like. Such PATUKA can be as long as 11 hat, which is about 5 meters or 16.5 feet. For our PATUKA, we want it to be long enough for this kind of utility and all historical carry methods around notably larger modern Western wastes. As a result, we have gone with a 16 hut PATUKA, which equates to around 7.5 meters or 24 feet.
To tie in this style, we can perform the same actions as previously, but starting with twisted fabric, of course. Unlike other styles, differing placement of the bands can produce very different end results. Historical examples seem to stack these passes on top of one another, which results in a spooled look. In one historical example, the tail is terminated in a knot that wraps around and grabs the dap, though this is also seen on a wider, flatter style also. In our testing, we have found that this gives a tight enough hold on the sheath that it can allow for a one-handed draw with blade styles from this time period. These twisted cords allow for limited small object storage capability, but it allows for the most freedom of movement. In this style, the kukri is shown to be inserted through one or more loops rather than under the entire band. This allows the bands under the dap to spread the force and is notably more comfortable, particularly in movement over extended periods. As we go farther back, we have found depictions of waist sashes as far back as 1223 AD. However, these are depicted terminated with distinct long twin tails, and they also seem notably narrower and more scarf-like. It is unclear if this would have been considered a PATUKA at the time, or is instead another garment. With the increasing westernization and standardization of Nepali military gear in the late 19th century, the PATUKA found itself replaced by leather belts, with many kukris being fitted with frogs to facilitate the new type of carry. It's worth noting that frogs do not inhibit the option for sash carry in the same way that an integrated belt loop would. This is something that may have helped the success and longevity of the construction method within Nepal, while frogs were becoming less common in civilian and military carry elsewhere in the world. The PATUKA remains a part of the traditional dress of many ethnic and religious groups, such as the Newar, Magar, and Tamang. While still certainly a unisex item, in recent years it has become more strongly associated with women. This may be partly due to the demilitarization of the item and the severing of the ties to the traditionally masculine kukri. But also, it seems related to the wearing of a PATUKA during pregnancy, both for back support during gestation and to aid a return to normal abdominal structure afterwards. Hopefully this video has taught you a thing or two about the PATUKA. Do you have any feedback on how we could improve a video like this in future? Do you have any more resources or information that we might have missed about the historical or traditional usage of the PATUKA? If so, then please let us know, as we'd be greatly appreciative. Have a great day!